104.5 The Team, your home for New York Yankees baseball. My absolute favorite point of the week. Buster Olney on the phone with us right here. And Buster, Yankees have not lost during Hope Week. Can I start believing in them again?
You can start having some hope, like the Yankees. And yeah, they're playing well. And, you know, it is cool to see a moment like we saw with Chris Parmelee, who's one of these guys. He spent a lot of time, paid his dues in the minor leagues, bounced around from team to team, never established. And so now to see them, you know, grab him and you know, install him at first base and be helped. It reminds you of that year when Aaron Small, remember him?
Yeah.
Stepped up big for the Yankees and helped out the team. And, you know, let's face it, that's probably where they are with this. And here's the other good thing. There's enough problems with the other teams in the division, whether it's the Orioles rotation, the Red Sox rotation, the Toronto bullpen, that's going to allow the Yankees to just kind of hang in there. And they seem to be increasingly a different team when they're at home than when they're on the road. They always seem to catch life when they get back to Yankee Stadium.
So, Buster, not so much that the Yankees have figured out their issues, but there's just enough issues to go around to keep them alive.
Right. I don't think we're going to start comparing the 2016 Yankees or any of the other AL East teams with the 98 Yankees. But, you know, I think that's probably going to help keep the Yankees in the wild card race. I looked at it today, and they're 4 games out in the wild card and 6.5 out in the American League East. And considering all the issues that they've dealt with, maybe that's not so bad.
Buster, you just made Jeff Levack a very happy man.
I've been pretty happy this week. Well, Buster, I mean, we had Wally Matthews on, and Wally said that he doesn't think the Yankees are going to make any big moves because if they technically throw up the white flag, those empty seats are going to grow. So where we were hoping that maybe they would move a Beltran, move a Miller, get better in the future, we're looking. They're going to go lock, stock, and two smoking barrels for the rest of the season.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. And I'm not saying that they're not going to. I mean, they're not going to make big moves to get better. In other words, they're not going to make big moves where they're taking on big names in the trade market. I do think it's possible that you'll see them, and they've done this a few times in recent years. Basically, take on some money from some teams that are just trying to dump some salary as the trade deadline, and maybe get a little bit better incrementally that way. But I don't think they're going to trade any prospects to get better. And I do think it's still possible that they're going to wind up making these parallel moves where, you know, even while trying to contend, they're going to market Andrew Miller. They're going to be having conversations with other teams about Andrew Miller, just like they did last winter. And it just comes down to whether or not they agree to a trade. They actually got down the pike in trade conversations with Houston, but ultimately the organization pulled back on that one. I think they'll have similar conversations this summer with the Cubs, the Rangers, the Giants, the Dodgers, and other teams.
ESPN's Buster Olney joining us right here on 104.5 The Team, Levack and Wolf. Wolf, what do you want?
Buster, first base, sort of a temporary thing going on there right now for the Yankees. What do you think the long-term solution is for that?
Well, Greg Bird, when he comes back next year, you know, after missing all this season, they saw so much at the end of last year that excited them. And if you ever, you have a conversation with Greg Bird, he's got like the perfect personality to play in New York because he's very low key. He's like a perfect San Francisco Giant. He fits in with the Brandon Crawfords and Buster Posey and all these understated guys. And he's a power hitter for Yankee Stadium. Now, I haven't checked on this yet in the last month or so. I know that when he had his surgery, there was an outside hope that he would be back for the last weeks of this regular season, and but at the very least, they know that he's going to be back full strength for 2017.
Buster, one of my bold predictions before the season began, CC Sabathia is going to be my comeback player of the year.
Wow.
I mean, he kind of looks like he could be that guy, right? I might not be that stupid.
No, I think you could actually look pretty good. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure that if you gave truth serum to the folks in the Yankees staff, that they probably would say, yeah, we're totally surprised. Based on what we saw in spring training and how he was throwing, because, CC hadn't ever had to be like a command guy. When Jamie Moyer got older and made adjustments and became a really good off-speed type pitcher, this is a guy with really great command. CC wasn't always that fine, and that's why I think evaluators are surprised that he seems to be making this transition to being able to make 86, 87 miles per hour work with his fastball, and give him credit. And it says a lot about how competitive he is, because I do think that there'd be some players, that I covered in the past who at some point during his struggles, or, this type of struggle that CeCe's had, that they would have just said, you know what, I'm waving the white flag, I got my guaranteed money, I'm all good, I'm never going to have a problem eating, neither are my great-great-grandkids, and I'm going to take it to the house. And CeCe never did that. He always worked to compete.
Buster Olney with us, making me feel very good on this Thursday. It's Hope Week is coming alive even on this call. The Mets, it looks like the exact same team from last year to me. They can't score runs. They even signed Kelly Johnson. Can Mets fans look forward to an addition of maybe a Yoenis Cespedes magnitude?
I think that remains to be seen. Look, when you look at the makeup of the team, they're not necessarily going to be in as clear-cut a position to have an ad like they did last year with Cespedes, because we knew that, in the outfield they had huge problems, and so they could get Cespedes. But now when you look at the team, with the money devoted to David Wright and with some uncertainty about what he's going to want to do, it's not like you're going to go out and overwhelm the Chicago White Sox right now and say, we'll give you one of our, 3-4 best starting pitchers for Todd Frazier. I don't think the Mets are close to thinking about doing that. Lucas Duda is a young player who's shown flashes, so I don't think they're going to rush out to get some big first baseman, and I don't even know if there necessarily would be one. Second base and shortstop, not huge upgrades. The one guy that I've wondered about, and this is total speculation from me, given Travis d'Arnaud's issues that he had and, his struggles and physical issues, I have wondered this summer if at any point the Mets would speak internally about Jonathan Lucroy, the catcher for the Milwaukee Brewers. Terrific. He's been an all-star in the past, where they might say, you know what, let's call up the Brewers and see if they're interested in starting a conversation about Lucroy with Zach Wheeler, who's coming back from Tommy John surgery. And, based on what I hear, the Brewers are asking for the sun and the moon and the stars for Lucroy. But I got to believe that Zach Wheeler at least gets you in a position where the GM of the Brewers, David Stearns, isn't hanging up on you.
I got to ask you something about Tommy John surgery. We spoke to Tommy John a couple of weeks back, and nobody, and he talked a little bit about his rehab and how he handled himself after the surgery. He was a little perplexed that nobody has called him, no trainer, nobody, to ask the best way to rehab, after Tommy John surgery. Now, granted, it's a long time ago, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I think you're right. The fact that it was so long ago that maybe some people would feel like that he doesn't necessarily have updated information because there's been so much advancement medically. But I also, I do think that in this current generation of front office people, that there is a little bit of, we know better than you do.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example that I asked Tim Corbin, the head baseball coach at Vanderbilt. They've had so many players come out through the draft, and I asked him, hey, as players that you had go through struggles, how often do you get calls? And he said to me, a lot less than you would think. So, I mean, he was kind of like their father for 4 years, and you'd think that if, some former player of theirs was struggling, that they might call him and say, so he's going through this, what do you think? And he says those calls aren't made, which I don't get it, but there's another example of what you're talking about.
Yep.
Buster, is there any truth to the rumor that Manny Machado called Floyd Mayweather or Odor to figure out how to punch Ventura in the face? I mean, what a crazy brawl, and the 99-mile-per-hour fastball that gets you all rolling.
Yeah, and it reminded, as soon as I saw it, because I'm sure you guys saw how it played out, this was not a situation where, two Royals had been hit accidentally, and then, Yordano Ventura felt like that he needed to answer on behalf of his teammates. This was a pitcher having a bad day and taking it out on Manny Machado with a 99-mile-per-hour fastball right in the middle of the back. If you're a Yankee fan, this is Armando Benitez drilling Tino Martinez in 1998, okay? Mm-hmm. It's a temper tantrum. And 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation the day after Noah Syndergaard threw behind Chase Utley, and Adrian Gonzalez raised a great question. He said, look, at a time when baseball is trying to improve player safety, eliminating home plate collisions, changing the slides at second base, What about pitchers just using a baseball to target hitters? Why is that something that still goes on? And that's why when the suspension comes down, I think the book is going to be thrown more at Ventura for how this played out than Manny Machado, who's going to get suspended. Because if you charge the mound and throw punches, you're probably going to get 6 or 7 games. But I'm going to be really curious to see what Ventura gets, because people around baseball were furious, and it was noted by some general managers with other teams that when they watched video of that incident, they noticed that when Ventura got back into the Royals dugout, no teammates were next to him or coming up to him. And so maybe they were upset about it too.
Well, Buster, I think it is the Benitez hit to Martinez that makes me hate that so much. I've said on the show many times, like, if you have to police the inside of the plate. I get that. And every once in a while, the unwritten rules of the game, you hit a batter. But not with a 99-mile-per-hour fastball. That's ridiculous.
And not trying to injure somebody. And it's total. And on top, not in a situation where it's just because you're having a bad day. You give up a home run, you make a bad pitch, a hitter hits a home run, so you're going to drill the next guy, or you're going to drill that guy when he comes to the plate again? That's ridiculous. And I don't think there's any place for it in baseball. And even when, I was a beat writer covering teams, and I'd hear people talk about old-time pitchers. Boy, that guy was tough. He'd knock you down. He'd throw at you. And I saw Roger Clemens, who I really liked to cover, but I saw him just drill guys because he was having a bad day. Pedro Martinez, the same thing. I never got why that was perceived to be like a tough act, because, as Adrian Gonzalez said to me in my conversation at Citi Field, whatever the opposite of tough is, it's drilling a hitter who's completely defenseless.
Buster Olney with us here on 104.5 The Team. All right, let's have some fun now. I am in love with the idea of Mad Bum Madison Bumgarner, a pitcher in the Home Run Derby.
And I tell you what, I think there's a chance that it might happen. Yes. I first heard about it last Saturday when we had the Giants and the Cardinals in Sunday Night Baseball, and I was preparing for that, and I was hearing from some of the Giants people, yeah, Madison really wants to do that. And the next day, Bumgarner came up to me, pointed directly at me, said, "You got to get me in the Home Run Derby." Okay? And so that we filmed his batting practice. I'm sure you guys saw it. He's hitting balls in the upper deck in St. Louis, beyond where Big Mac Land is, named for Mark McGwire. And his teammates, say everywhere they go, every day, he puts on a show like that. He's 6'5", he's 250 pounds. He's baseball's Paul Bunyan. Casual fans know him. When I came back from St. Louis, my son, who's 11 and he's a big baseball fan, hadn't heard about it. And I showed him the video, and I said, "Hey, would you like to see him in the Home Run Derby?" And my son's face lit up so much. And it was the same with other baseball people this week. They're saying, we got to make this happen. The question, of course, is whether or not the Giants and Bruce Bochy will allow him. When I asked Madison about that on Sunday, he looked at me like a kid who was asking his dad for the car keys, and he was like, "Oh, he'll let me do it. He'll let me do it." And you know what? The whole thing about injury risk to me is so completely overstated and stupid. Think about this. Who's more at injury risk? Madison Bumgarner doing something he does every day, take batting practice with big hacks, or Buster Posey playing in the All-Star game, right? And being at risk for being hit by a pitch, like Robinson Cano was drilled by Matt Harvey a few years ago on the knee. And I think Bruce Bochy has enough stature. He's a future Hall of Famer. Well, he'll look at it in a different way, and I can tell you this. Major League Baseball people, some of them at least, really want this to happen.
It's just too much fun not to happen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Buster Olney with us. Buster, tonight the Capital Region is going to be paying close attention to the Major League Baseball draft because Shen pitcher Ian Anderson is expected to go 15 to 20, maybe even 18 to the Yankees. I know that you have written an article about the draft and a little bit of a situation that's making you less than happy dealing with it.
Well, it's just the teams now are working so hard to pick at the very top of the draft because, in this year's draft, if you have the number one overall pick with the slotting system they have, you get about $10 million. The Phillies have a $10 million signing pool. If you are picking seventh in the draft, your signing pool is about $3 million. So more than 3 times the amount of money if you finish last. And it seems like teams are designing their clubs in the offseason so that they're really, really, really bad. They're not just content, picking 5 or 6. They want to be absolutely awful. And if you look at, how the standings are playing out, the run differentials are playing out. The National League is so polarized, and while we love to give credit, and the Cubs deserve all the credit in the world for their success, part of the reason why is because you've got National League teams who, not the players and not the managers, but clearly the front offices are during the off season design their teams for failure. That's not a good thing for baseball.
Well, the Braves have done a great job then.
Well, their run differential, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I think the worst run differential in baseball last year was like a minus 150, okay, by the Phillies. This year, there are two teams that are going to be around minus 250.
Holy.
And there are, I think, 7 teams are going to be minus 100, about double the number of teams last year who were at that rate. That's terrible product, and it's not good for baseball.
Buster, what is good for baseball is you and the crew running around the country. Where are you going to be this weekend?
In San Francisco, Dodgers, Giants, and I think the subject of Madison Bumgarner and the Derby will come up.
I love it, man. Buster, thanks for making time for us. Really enjoy it each and every week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Buster.